Good. Hello, everyone. Welcome back to Fuel Arts, Art and Tech webinar series. We have important news from Venice this week. The Venice Biennale 2022 has started, and despite some predictions that it will be held in the metaverse, Biennale this time still opened in a familiar to us and traditional format. However, this year its parallel program can be considered far from traditional. I mean, the decentral art pavilion called Singularity, which brought together an interesting set of digital artists. So, will this Venetian NFT project shock the audience as much as Tesla's pavilion did that last time at Art Basel Miami Beach? We'll know for sure next week, because our next guest will come directly from Venice. Meanwhile, in Los Angeles, their domestic art tech startup called Studio has raised 50 million in funding, jumping straight to Series B. So Studio started with online music courses several years ago, back in 2019. But now they have expanded their activity into other areas, including design and painting, online courses on painting. That's why they got into the art tech ecosystem and got under our Fuel Arts radar. So we see that the online education becomes more and more demanding, and we're happy to remind you about our pre-acceleration courses that finally start on May 16, 2022. So we are launching the two online pre-acceleration programs, from idea to prototype. First one is called Classic Art Tech Startups. It's devoted to the digital transformation of the traditional art market. And the second course is Digital and NFT Startups, dedicated to those who want to release their ideas connected with NFT-based products. So startups founders, cultural entrepreneurs, art managers, gallery owners, artists, NFT creators, students, and all young professionals still can apply. So the programs will give an early stage founders the knowledge to fundraise and launch their art tech or NFT startup approximately 3 times faster than with the minimum budget. And I'm happy to present you the guest of today's webinar, who will be one of the mentors of this pre-acceleration course. Last week, we have been discussing British art market and art tech startups in the UK. And this week, we are shifting towards the French one. So I'm welcoming Natasha Rottman Le Tanneur. Hello, Natasha.
Hello, thank you so much for having me.
Thank you for coming. Natasha has over 15 years of experience in all aspects of taking a startup from concept to full funding, and also successful acquisition, like with Collectrium by Christie auction house in late 2015. So prior to launching her current startup, ArtPaie Collective, she was a sales lead at Artnet and Collectrium, and also worked for Christies. And as I said, Natasha is also one of the mentors at Fuel Arts. And also I'm happy to introduce my co-host, Sonia Stubblebine,
Hi, everyone.
manager of Fuel Arts. But Sonia, please let me ask Natasha let me be first asking Natasha my question. So getting back in 2015 and your experience with Collectrium and that tremendous acquisition for, as it said, 17 or $17.5 million. So how was it feeling yourself a part of the most expensive startup ever acquired by that moment?
Yeah, it was such a watershed moment for us, for everyone in the market. It was a great feeling. Of course, it was everyone's perception was that it was like an overnight success. Of course, it was a 8-year overnight success. So, important that everybody else who's sort of starting out in the startup world remember that it took us 8 years to get there, but it was a fabulous 8-year ride. And yeah, it was the first time that we ever had conversations with an institution that was going to buy an art startup, and that was pretty incredible. I'm very lucky that, full disclosure, I have a history with Christie's. So I got my art history master's with them in London with Christies Education. And so I was part of what they kind of call or refer to the Christie's family already, though I never worked for them. And but it did allow me to get that first foot in the door to first have conversations, and that was pretty amazing. And it also led to just some incredible moments of learning. We got to see what it is that they, use in terms of their back end. We got to see what their clients use. I got to do some really amazing A/B testing where we got to video some of their collectors using our system and another popular collection management system whose name shall remain nameless, and got to see where the user tripped up on that system or our system, what was easier for them, what was harder. Did it make a difference in terms of age, or did it make a difference if it was the collector themselves or if it was their secretary or the curator for their personal collection? It was a very, very different audience depending on who you actually had in front of the computer, even though your main client was the collector. So it was quite fascinating and taught me so much about what we wanted to change to our product, where we wanted to go, how we could make our product more usable for the sort of varied users that we were appealing to at the time, because we were basically building a product that essentially was like 4 products in one, because we had an art fair product, we had a collector product, we had an auction house product, we had a gallery product. So it was, walking that thin line between trying to be everything for everyone and also trying to make sure that we were just a right amount for the people who wanted to buy us, of course. So that was a fascinating ride. It was incredible. I can never say more than just how much fun that time was, actually. It was a lot of fun.
That sounds amazing. It seems like you really did enjoy the path, although it's been like 8 long years. So what was your transition from like working in the art market to actually launching your own startup?
Yeah, I'm really lucky that going from Collectrium, I got a little bit poached right at the end there by Artnet, and I had this amazing experience working with them where we were trying to figure out if there was a way to automate the sort of post-sale flow a lot more. So I was really the head of the post-sale process. So once somebody won a bid or bought something in a private sale through Artnet, through the Artnet auctions and private sales, they would come in and sort of figure out how are they going to pay for that work? When is that payment going to be released? How are we going to ship that work? How does the shipping work in terms of where is the collector, where is the seller? And very often it's actually in the ArtNet world, it's actually galleries who are buying a lot. So you have a different type of consumer than when you're dealing with just an individual collector. They're more savvy. They have their own sort of way that they want to do it already. They do this all the time. And you have to sort of work within their notion of how it should go already, versus how maybe you want it to go at Artnet in terms of making it more streamlined, a bit smoother, a bit safer, because of course, everyone's always shocked to know that in fact, most buyers want you to use the shipping method that is in fact the most financially affordable and not necessarily the safest. So you as the seller sometimes are trying to get them to get insurance or use a more qualified shipper, and they just want to use FedEx, all sorts of fun stuff. So it was dealing with that sort of post flow and trying to figure out, is there a way to make that as automated as possible, to have it sit in our back end, to have them be able to just sort of check automated forms a lot easier, get quotes, do things as much as possible online instead of just throwing bodies at the issue and just constantly having to call back and forth between the seller and the buyer. So in that fascinating process, this is how I came up with the idea actually of trying to help to automate the buying process, especially when you have very often a buyer who's outside of the US and a seller that's inside of the US, which was the predominant case, particularly at Artnet.
Thank you, Natasha. Before I ask you my next question, let me comment on what you have said before. You've mentioned that by the date of successful acquisition of Collectrium, it combines several strategies like art fair, like collection management, copyright management. So from our experience and based on our few lots of research, from 10 most successful art and tech acquisitions, mergers and acquisitions, 4 startups had mixed strategies, like production and trade and analytics, or management and production. But it's good when it comes to, let's say, to the final destination of the startup, when it has to be acquired. Because institutional investors are looking for a diversified startup. But I'm now addressing, and I can't stop addressing, to young companies, to young entrepreneurs. Please forget about it. Until you're grown up, just polish one idea, take one idea and develop it, because the initial money is given to those startups whose idea is clear. But of course, you can keep in mind your scaling, your next moves, your diversification. But please start with something very simple, something very transparent and clear to your investors.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. I think there's a happy middle ground that I think successful startups tend to reach, which is you have one particular product that a couple of people in the art world can use. So my advice always when I'm talking to young entrepreneurs is, you really want to, in my opinion, it's a little bit go-to-market strategy, but it's also just, I think, the only way that you can appeal to investors is you want to think about who are the different players that would show up at an art fair. Do you have a product that can be used by more than one type of quote-unquote user at an art fair? So if you have one product that you're focusing on, but collectors can use it, maybe slightly tweaked to their needs, and also galleries can use it, and also maybe art advisor can use it, which is usually the case when it comes to like collection management, which is what we were doing at Collectrium. But also, even if you look at some of the shipping giants now in the art market, they're appealing to more than one type of user, but they're selling one product. That you can start off with. You can certainly start off right away saying we've got one product, but we're going to diversify who can use it and how we appeal to those different users. But yes, for sure, something that we definitely took some flack for at Collectrium appropriately is that we sometimes diversify too much, spread ourselves too thin, try to tweak the product too much, incorporate too many different bangs and whistle things for everybody, when we should have just focused on the core usage, the core product, for a little bit longer. So yeah, it's an easy pitfall to fall into.
So, and not to mention that the CTO of Collectrium was Tim Kompanchenko, a Ukrainian guy. Ukrainians are known to be the best CTOs ever, and we're also happy to welcome all the startups led by Ukrainians, founded by Ukrainians, or having Ukrainian CTOs or Ukrainian co-founders. So for Ukrainians, the pre-acceleration will be free.
Yes, I love it. Yes,
sure, because Ukrainians deserve that. Sure. So, but my regular question will be the following. It took the founder of Collectrium, Boris Pevsner, 7 years to establish his new startup, Live Art. But it took 1.5 or 2 years for you to establish ArtPaie, now known as ArtPaie Collective.
Yeah.
So how did you find the market?
He took a much needed break from the art world. He needed to take a little break from the art world. I give him total respect for having to take a little break from the art world and choosing to come back in a little bit later. But
how did you find the market niche? How did you find the market niche for that? I mean, had it been your previous experience which allowed you doing so, or you made a specific market research?
Yeah, it was totally my previous experience. I'm very lucky that I haven't actually had to do a lot of market research to find what I'm going to do next, because I got sucked into Collectrium as a very young person, just coming out of finishing my master's with Christie's, returning back to New York. It was my first internship, which turned into my first job after 4 months. So I'm very lucky that I had quite an incredible run from the beginning. And then with ArtPaie, it was the same thing. I had this wonderful idea while I was at Artnet. It just happened to be that circumstances were such that I was moving to Paris for my husband. And so it meant that there was going to be a shift, and it was the right time for me to go out on my own. And I'm very lucky that Jacob, the lovely CEO at Artnet, was like, you should just go run for it and do your own thing. And, we can be your clients one day, because they weren't really that interested in completely building that tool in-house anyway. So I was just very lucky in that sense. But yeah, it's, every single thing that I encountered at Collectrium or at Artnet helped me, in a sense, do market research when I didn't realize I was doing it. Because, of course, trying to understand what were the needs of my clients and understanding why there was such an issue with payment and transfers and credit card payment and what those pitfalls were is what led me to think, gee, somebody really should try to organize this a little bit and do a better job of it in the art world, because, yeah, we tend to ignore the financial side of things, in fact, quite a bit in the art world. And everyone kind of does their own thing. And also it's difficult because the US is got a very different system from Europe. And so there were a lot of issues there. So I ended up doing accidental market research by just doing my job at Artnet. So that's how it happened for me.
That sounds great. I loved how you said like accidental market research. That's amazing.
That's my own fault.
Exactly. If we're talking about ArtPaie, like, could you explain our audience how exactly collectors, like artists, can use the app, like how they can use that?
Yeah, so we basically pivoted to doing more consulting work than anything else, because what we found is almost all of our clients had very, very specific individual needs. So for example, an artist has a website, they want to be able to sell things directly, and maybe they have only NFTs to sell, maybe they have physical works to sell, and they have no idea how they're going to sell this on their own, and they don't know if they should create, let's say, a website just using like Squarespace, for example, and adding in a little like Stripe at the back end that's going to take credit cards, or here in Europe, it's more often a system that's called Payzen, things like this. And how do they make sure that their collectors can actually buy safely and securely their works? So that, would be one sort of user type case in the artist case, where we're going to work with them to figure out, okay, what's the best way to actually charge your clients? Because sometimes it does make sense for it to be something on what I would call like the lower end of payment, which would be PayPal. And sometimes it makes sense for it to be on the higher end because the amounts are just larger and you just can't use PayPal, or the fees are so ridiculous that it doesn't make sense to use PayPal, things like that. So yeah, it's understanding what are the constraints, where are the predominant amount of their buyers, are they in Hong Kong? Is it an Asia-based artist? Are they in Europe or in the US? Because it makes a large difference about what kind of backend system they should be using. And then, of course, the same goes for a gallerist that has a website that's trying to get people also to send payments. Even when they are not having that collector buy strictly from the website, they still have to go through the payment solution at the end. Even if they're meeting the collector at an art fair or in person, it can be quite difficult, actually, to just pay for larger works with just a swipe of a card. A lot of people, especially outside the art world, tend to think that that's how it happens, but of course it's not. It's actually quite complicated. You can't just use even your black Amex with no limits to buy a 20,000, which wouldn't even be super huge necessarily in the art world artwork, because Amex will think this is fraud. They don't know who's charging this 20,000. Who is this little gallery that's originally from Berlin but is now charging a collector in Paris at an art fair? What is going on? So it's basically acting like a liaison between the banking world, the financial world, all the financial apps that are out there, and everybody in the art world. So this is how basically our clients use us. When they can't figure out how to charge people, they come to us and ask us how, and we help them.
Sounds great.
Yeah, this fantastic elevator pitch reply can be considered completed without the website where people could know more
Absolutely. You can check us out at artpaiecollective.com. Very good. Dennis, you're absolutely right that I should be advertising ourselves more. I love it.
Sure, because you paid for that. I'm joking. Of course, I'm joking. So, Natasha, you told us that you moved from New York to Paris following your family.
Yes, that's right.
But in recent years, we see that a lot of huge companies are moving to their art businesses to Paris because of Brexit, first of all, because of geopolitical uh, instability. So, and there are even rumors that Paris wants to restore sooner or later its status of the world art capital. So, and recently we heard the news that France and the Monaco region should sooner or later become the new crypto center of Europe, along with Lisbon. So, and we hear about a lot of investments which are made by French entrepreneurs, French investors, and into French startups. But how it was 5 years ago, I mean, could you please describe the peculiarities of launching an art tech startup in France? Is it the same like? Is it the same success like Gagosian and David Zwirner, who launched their galleries and are successful? So, what was the attitude of the art markets and investors towards art tech startups there and now?
Yeah, I mean, it's definitely been a real amazing turnaround in the last 5 years. So when I first got here, people were mostly ignoring Paris a little bit at that time. Christie's had shut down their Christie Education Paris office, so had Sotheby's. So just to give you a sense of like, where are people going to go to do their art business, master's program, suddenly wasn't any more available in Paris, and you had to go to London if you were in France or in the rest of Europe. And there was a lot of focus on saving businesses, small businesses within France, politically wise, 5 years ago, and very, very little on trying to get foreign investment or sort of pulling away from London. Sort of viewed like, well, London's doing that, we don't have to go there. That's London's domain, was a little bit the attitude. And so you could feel that within the art market as well. Now, a couple of things changed. One, Macron won for the first time. And that was massive because his idea was, well, listen, Brexit can be a fabulous thing for us. We're going to put Paris on the map again, and France is going to lead Europe, and it's going to be a Franco-German alliance that will lead Europe in the EU instead of just Germany. And we're going to sort of reclaim a lot of the autonomy that maybe we previously let go of. So that was a huge shift because that meant that we had an entrepreneur called Xavier Niel, who created the largest incubator and startup, let's say, hall in the world here right on the outskirts of Paris, which was massive. There was this huge push to support startups, new businesses, entrepreneurial ideas, technology. And it boosted a lot of the art fairs because the art fairs here started to get a lot more of an injection of cash. And that then boosted the art market because once you have those art fairs and you get more collectors in, you're going to have more galleries pop up, especially galleries you can be a part of the satellite fairs that happen in conjunction with FIAC and Art Paris and some of the bigger fairs. So that really shot us forward. Whether people necessarily love Macron or not, for the art market, he was fabulous. He was really fabulous. So that had a huge shift, which I could see immediately. Then, of course, Paris is still fabulous. It's Paris. Who doesn't want to visit here? So, we have I think, we're either one or two in terms of the most visited capital cities in the world. So, we can bank on that. We can really bank on the fact that there are a lot of people who are going to come through and want to come through, certainly in the South, through Monaco, and want to see art and maybe have second homes. Interestingly enough, to not touch too much on current politics, but that was a huge part of the influx of Russian millionaires and billionaires in the South who were buying a lot of art and a lot of design work for their houses. So that was a huge part of the not just real estate, but art market within France for a while, which of course now, not so much. Yeah. So, this made a big impact. I think the other big impact is now we have a few more of the French voices who have been for a very long time pushing for focus on virtual, on startups and on technology within the art world. We have certain collectors like Sylvain Lévy. We have Frédéric Jousset, who just started one of these largest sort of capital firms, as well as an organization to push art. He's the one who's behind Beaux-Arts et Compagnie, Le Quotidien de l'Art, who are the ones who actually backed one of the first digital art fairs to come to Paris, CADAF. So, you have a lot more, let's say, backing and cultural push for startups, for technology within the Paris market. And then on top of it, you have, yes, that we benefit completely from Brexit. It's one of the few perks is that a lot more people have come here. A lot of French people who were living in London have come back. They have a taste now for the art market. They want to see what they had in London here. They want sales here. Fabulous. So now you have Christie's as well, adding in, so Christie's and Sotheby's, I think, was starting in last year that they started to do their big flagship sales, making sure that there was one in Paris at the same time as there was London, Hong Kong, and New York. And before it was just London, Hong Kong, and New York, and then the Paris sales were a different season. So to group them more together is a real clear sign. Another thing that's helping us out a little bit right now is, sadly, all of the controversy that's happening in Hong Kong. The more that Hong Kong is narrowing, the more people are having to come over here into London. And so that also has been boosting us quite a bit. So seeing, Asia Now Art Fair had way more visitors here in Paris than they did in previous years. And it was clear because there were so many artists and journalists who felt that they could only be free to express themselves here in Paris rather than in Hong Kong, that it really boosted them. So I think that's part of the trend that we're seeing that's going to continue on, this sort of art market renaissance that's happening in Paris currently. Yeah.
That sounds very interesting. How many factors actually influenced all together to Paris to become such an important center of the art market again?
Absolutely.
Yeah. Because so many people are listening to us, they're actually young entrepreneurs. I think the right question to ask you would be, what exactly is go-to-market strategy, and why is it so important for the startup founders to actually think about it?
Yeah, so it's really important, one, the more obvious one is because investors are always going to ask you. So if you're looking for money and you want to talk to investors, it's the question you're going to get asked all the time. But two, it really is the foundation of your success, because you can have a really great idea for a product, but if you don't know how to get it into the hands or in front of the faces of the people that are going to use it, then no one will know about it and it won't get used. And forget about the fact that, of course, then they won't pay for it and you won't be able to make any money off of it. But, it's one of those things where you have to have an audience. You don't want to necessarily be an actor in your bedroom. You want to be able to be an actor in a theater. So what theater are you going to present your product in? And this is why I think that it's so important for especially young entrepreneurs these days, because sometimes there is the misconception that you have a great product idea and that's enough, which unfortunately, I wish it was, but it isn't. So very often when they come off so knowledgeable about who's going to use this product and how are they going to use it and where are they going to use it and what kind of device are they going to use it on, and does it have anything to do with device? Nowadays it must have something to do with the device. Even when it's art shipping, you have to think about, are they going to be booking this, shipping process on an iPad, on a smartphone, on the computer? Where is this going to be happening? And yeah, it's then defines a lot of how you want to make that product, no matter what it is. If it's a sales platform, if it's a financial app in any way, if it's art shipping, if it's curating, even if it's selling just advisory services, Where is the collector going to think to go look for an advisor? When would they think to do that? Would they think to do that on the go in their office? Will it be their secretary who's looking for the advisor, not them? Who is your client base? So really, go-to-market strategy is about, I think we tend to hear go-to-market strategy, which is like a leftover business term. But really what you're thinking about is who is your user, who's going to use your product, where, how, when. How can you reach them? And that's basically all you really have to focus on for the first couple of years.
Thank you, Natasha. I mean, thank you for not disclosing all the secrets and keeping something until the acceleration if you are towards the start. We have a question from our audience. Let me announce it. Natasha, what is your favorite gallery in France? And what's your favorite art fair?
Oh, that's really hard to answer. What's my favorite gallery? I don't think I can answer that. There's so many galleries that I love, and there's so many galleries that I discover that are like right in my backyard and that I never even knew existed. I walked through the Marais yesterday, and there were like 2 new galleries that hadn't even been there 2 months ago. That's the amazing thing about living in a capital city with so much change happening and life happening, is that there's always some new favorite gallery. So I don't even know who I would say. I think maybe I'll just pick who my like favorite just for the moment is. It's a gallery that's not that far down the road for me, actually, François Durand, who has an amazing exhibition of an incredible Vietnamese-French artist who I really, really love, and has a perspective that's very interesting and different, and does a lot of works that are basically portraiture that are amazing, but a little bit Chuck Close-esque because he uses just lots of swirly lines. So Hom Nugent is an amazing artist that he has put forward in his gallery and that I'm kind of addicted with at the moment and that I love. In terms of art fair, again, very hard. So many that I love. It really depends on what I'm looking for, because sometimes I love going to a design fair because I love design, I love furniture, I love architecture quite a bit. So sometimes I really want to see, all design like at Pad Art Fair. So one of my favorites. Sometimes I really want to go to Art Paris because it's where I'm going to see a lot more contemporary and fresh looks. Sometimes I want to go to FIAC because FIAC is going to show me some of the real, blue chip artwork that, maybe I just miss seeing in general, because I love seeing a good old fashioned Botero sitting with nice lighting in the Grand Palais. There's nothing else like it. So it depends on what my mood and my taste is. There's just so many art fairs. I mean, that's also what's amazing, is there was recently a new art fair called District 13, which was an amazing new art fair here in Paris. That was out of the Drouot Auction House site. So there's so much to choose from, but that's me just giving a little spattering of what I love, but there's so many to choose from. I could never say that one is only my favorite.
Also, Art Basel is coming to Paris.
Right.
Yeah, indeed. Yes, we're all very excited. Indeed. Yes, so I can't wait. I think it's gonna be awesome.
So nowadays we have a proverb. I mean, after 1970, to be exact, we have a proverb: seen in Venice, bought in Basel.
Yes, that's fabulous. Absolutely.
And now I believe this proverb could be improved into seen in Venice, bought in Paris.
Why not? Absolutely.
Why not?
Yeah, absolutely. I think, another good point is, I know everyone's probably, anyone who's following European politics is a little bit nervous because we have another election coming up. It's being billed as being the match between the far right and the center here. But I am decently confident that Macron will win again. And I have lots of faith in the fabulous French people. I am not a French citizen at the moment, so I cannot vote myself. But I have lots of faith in the French people that they will pick the right choice and not go too far extreme. And it means that we're going to continue to have so many more art fairs, so many more opportunities flow into Paris because, stability and also not absolutely insane rents still for the moment are a nice combination for the art world. So I'm very excited.
Thank you. answering to Sonia's previous question, you mentioned that picking up a fake or false business idea is one of the most, let's say, popular hazards that young startups are facing with. But in your opinion, what does the art tech market in whole lack at the moment to be even more attractive for investments and startups?
I mean, the answer to that is very different here in France in comparison to other countries. I think here in Paris, there's an amazing moment going on in France. We do have a lot more investors, and we have a lot more international investors who are choosing to come here and invest money when they're coming from other European countries, which is awesome. This is the thing that I think is helping us to really move forward. So I do think that the tricky bit here can be if it's too much of a French focused startup, they can sometimes get a little too focused on we have a joke here in France between us in the tech world that very often you'll meet a French entrepreneur and he'll say, we're going global because we're going to go to Lille, or we're going to go to Lyon, another city in France, and we're like, oh, that's not quite global. So there can be, a sense that they should start out very small and stay within the French ecosphere and then maybe branch out to like London or Brussels, maybe. So we've been pushing a little bit for there to be a little bit more focused because, of course, it's what investors like to see, that it's a product that immediately, anyone in Europe can use. In fact, it doesn't really matter where the user is. We're not only focusing in France. So I think we're doing a good job of pushing the needle on that one a little bit and getting things to open up. But I definitely think it's where we still need to focus on, because it is true that a lot of French startups are a little too only focused on the French or the French-speaking region. And so that can be a little bit of a pitfall that allows for London and New York to outcompete us a little bit because, of course, users in various different countries are all using some version of a New York or London-based collection management system or whatever it is. And we need to be in that same kind of competition.
Thank you.
Makes total sense. And also coming back to your experience with ArtPaie, could you explain a little bit more in detail, what was your relationship with investors? Was it somehow influenced? It obviously was, by pandemic and later by this NFT crazy boom. Could you tell us more about it?
Yeah. It's been really interesting because our latest talks with investors have been so colored by the NFT movement and also by the pandemic. The pandemic helped us a lot in the art market startup world, because suddenly the idea of, I would say that France was still a little bit reticent on even just the idea of buying works fully online or buying from Instagram, that kind of thing. Whereas other capital cities had already sort of been there, done that a bit about that. Here, there was still a little bit of reticence. Suddenly the pandemic, it was like, oh, well, this is our only option. And now we have, what also helped us was the Louvre's strategy, actually. The Louvre started doing an amazing social media program that made it, let's say, established and acceptable to go ahead and reach out to people, tell them that they should be checking you out online, that they should be looking at works online, that they should be reading their Instagram stories and things like this. And suddenly all the French galleries followed suit, and it meant that a lot of the collectors who were maybe of a certain age here in France became that much more warm to the idea. So I would say that my investor talks right now are almost always based on NFT, online sales, and how we can use technology in the art world and what's going to be the next big thing. So that's amazing. I mean, when I first got here 6 years ago, nobody was talking like that. It was just absolutely unheard of. Sylvain Lévy was like the one outlier collector who was like screaming from the rooftops, technology is the way forward. And everybody was like, for him, and now all of a sudden, everyone's like, oh, I always knew Lévy was onto something, it's like, of course you did. So it's really, really changed. So it's had a huge impact.
It's quite incredible that it's been such a short time. It's basically been 2 years that changed so much and so quickly.
So true, so true. I've never seen such a radical change in 2 years. I mean, I think the only thing I can liken it to is when the iPad was just about to come out back in my Collectrium days, really, when everybody looked at me and was like, you're crazy. There's going to be this thing that's like a phone, but it's not a phone. And how are we going to use it? It's never going to make any sense. And galleries thought I was absolutely nuts when I was talking about it. And then a year and a half later, it was like, how can you be a gallery and not have an iPad? So, amazing that I can remember that. That dates me a lot, but it did actually happen. There was a time without iPad. So yeah, it's the same thing for me. It's like the internet, smartphones, tablets, and now NFT combined with COVID has just been the main markers for change.
I should admit that the soil for rising the NFT market was ready. It was previously gardened because it could never have happened without the combination of the two markets, which have been ready, almost ready till the pandemic has started. I mean, the creative economy market. We're taking all music, cinema, all that innovative approach. I mean, the 2.3 trillion market. And the second market, the crypto market, also
Totally.
2.2 trillion at the moment. So their combination has led to the rise of digital assets and NFTs. And of course, during pandemic, we understood that. So getting back to ArtPaie Collective, have already shifted into crypto payments with it?
Absolutely. It's not possible to not shift into crypto payments. So we have to help people be able to pay with crypto payments. Sometimes I have certain clients who have buyers who only want to pay using crypto payments. So they have to go looking for some kind of help because very often they don't even know what a crypto payment is. But they have a buyer who said, well, I'd like to pay you using this cryptocurrency. Do you know what that is? Do you know how to accept it? And they panic, of course, and we come in and say, we can help you with that. Don't worry. There's a system for that. Don't worry about it. But yeah, it's amazing, especially, here in Europe. In Paris, it's very similar to London, where you do have a lot of buyers that are, coming from other continents, even where things are a little bit maybe less stable. And so they, find it more secure and comfortable to pay in a cryptocurrency than to have to deal with the fact that, probably the bank is going to say, oh, well, this wire is coming from a bank that's located in such a country, and we don't know, and blah, 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 blah. And who are you? And what are you selling for 40,000 euros? What is this? And, because banks don't know of galleries. And I think people forget about that. It doesn't matter if you're Artnet, it doesn't matter if you're David Werner, it doesn't matter if you're Gagosian. All of them have had a, flag come up at Amex, Bank of America, all of them. I had Bank of America threaten to literally close down all the accounts of one of my collectors because he tried to send us at Artnet a payment. You know what I mean? It's like, and we're thinking, we are a incredibly established, older, how do you not know who we are, right? But Bank of America's, some worker somewhere with their automated flags for fraud, they don't know. They have no idea. So, I'll say, but we're at Art Basel. They don't know what Art Basel is, So it just, it's a question of, helping people figure out how they can securely, properly accept payment currencies. Everything is what we're working with right now, because everything is what everybody wants to use. Sometimes they want to use, a hard currency. Sometimes they want to use cryptocurrency. Sometimes they want to wire. It depends on each sale. So everybody's got to deal with it. Yeah.
That's so true. It seems like we all need to know more about crypto in general, not three of us, obviously, because I know that Dennis and obviously you know so much about it, but I feel like probably our audience and everyone else as well. And if we're talking about like NFTs, probably we ask already so many times, what do you think are the main benefits of NFTs for the art market, for the art world in general?
Yeah, it's a good question. I think the main benefits, because there are a lot. So it's what makes me say, what are the main? But because there are a lot of benefits, there are a lot of pitfalls with everything new that comes into the art world. There's always benefits, pitfalls. It depends on who's using, who's producing, who's doing what. But the good side, I would say, is that it's another incredible revenue stream for artists. It's another incredible revenue stream for galleries as well. I mean, obviously, a lot of people are focusing on this idea that it's going to democratize the art world and allow artists to sell directly to collectors easier. I am cautious about that because words I don't like are, disrupt and democratize when applied to the art market, because I think it very often falls flat and doesn't actually happen. And everyone gets a little disappointed when they're like, well, the whole art world wasn't completely democratized by this thing. It's the sort of famous when Artsy first came out and he was like, we're going to democratize the art world and we're going to Google for the art world. And you're just going to type into Google, I like this, and you're going to get an artwork back and it's going to be amazing. People probably don't even remember this anymore because they pivoted so much. That was their original pitch. And, of course, it doesn't quite work that way. The art market is still the art market. It's still filled with us people who define things. But the amazing side of NFT is, yes, you can have more direct access to a collector. You can build as an artist a following online that is separate of any go-betweens or advisors or collectors that, want to create a collection that is, let's say, based more on financial longevity or tradability. You can have a collector just fall in love with you as an artist and think you're really cool and decide to boom, I'm just going to buy you right now because I just saw your work on there and I like it and I want it on my computer screen, and that's that. So there's a little bit more of that direct impulse buy, which is the fun part of the art world. You want people to have a reaction to the art and to like it enough to feel passionate and say, I want to follow that guy the same way that they maybe would, follow, a music artist and say, well, gee, I want to go to his concert and buy his CD in a little local place because I want to support that artist and one day he's going to make it big and I knew him when. And so you can have that same kind of process with an artist, I think, much easier with NFTs. So that's the real good side in my mind.
Natasha, replying to this question, you said probably for purpose. It's a very fun part of the art world. Yeah. So NFTs are part of the art world, yeah, right?
I think so. I think they are. Yeah, absolutely here to stay. Yeah, I don't see that they're going to go anywhere. There's so much investment in them. Especially when you see it's just something to give you a sense is Christies and Sotheby's now have their own NFT departments. There's a department at Sotheby's for NFTs. There's a department at Sotheby's Paris here just for NFTs. That's amazing. I mean, that tells you, I think, the longevity that everybody understands NFTs and in that sense, cryptocurrency, blockchain, all the rest of it that goes with it, have within the art world. It's a part of the art world. If you don't think it is, then you're stuck in a pastime. It's time to.
Yeah, I mean, it's more important what IRS thinks if NFTs can be considered art or not in terms of taxation. Yes. And getting back to Sotheby's and Christie's, who have their NFT departments, I would call them, without any further comment, I would call them Gen Z database departments.
I love it. Well, I think it's more that you have to recognize that the major auction houses, like everybody else, is understanding now that they can't survive without online sales themselves. So, Christie, Sotheby's, they all have large online sales. A lot of what was sort of left to the realm of ArtNets before is now, being encroached upon by Christie's and Sotheby's, Phillips, Drouot, Tajan, any of the big auction houses throughout Europe and the US are all, heritage auctions in Texas. All of them are doing this now. All of them are trying to sell, more accessible, quote unquote, artwork online, because that's really where the bread and butter is, in fact. the incredible sales of like the Beeple, and also the incredible sale of the Botticelli or the Da Vinci are only going to happen ever so often. You can't subside off of that as a real business. And so I think that's part of why they're having NFT departments, because they understand that, like, well, this is part of the online sales strategy moving forward. We have to sell this as well, the same way that they sell the Basquiat decks, which nobody wants to think of as being highbrow, but everybody sells and makes very good money off of. So it's the same thing.
Right.
Question for Natasha from Poesie Liang.
Poesie, hello.
Yes, you know each other. So Poesie was asked a question on stage yesterday about the position of generative NFT projects like Bored Ape, Your Club in the contemporary art world. So what are your thoughts about this?
Oh, it's a good question. I don't know that I have my thoughts completely fully formed yet, because it's so new that I'm not entirely sure. I hate to make up my mind too fast, because I always want to make sure that I'm not just biased by the fact that it's something that's new. And very often when it's a new thing, our sort of knee-jerk instinct is, oh gosh, it's new. What is this? I don't like it. It's scary. So I'm not sure. I mean, I think that there's really a place for everything. I think generative art, I think there's no need to dismiss any kind of new media art. Right now at this point, it's about, is it fun? Do people like it? Do they engage with it? What's their reaction directly to the process, to the work? If it's good, then go for it. Now, certainly we have to be a little bit careful about, even with NFTs, right? We want to be careful about our carbon footprint, all of the different works that we're now doing on these platforms. They have a pretty negative carbon footprint. So from that perspective, sometimes I can think to myself, okay, well, how do we offset that? There's that negative, there's that shadow side to it. How do we make sure that these things are being somewhat regulated? Because very often when people are let loose, yes, you have tax implications and all sorts of different questions that come up later that people don't think about. And then sometimes they can get penalized, and it's quite a painful process. So certainly I'm keeping my eye on that area as well. But I think especially with the way the market is right now, go forth and create lots of new media art. And we'll figure it out as we go, as we normally do in the art world, because isn't that sort of the point? Nobody thought that the Impressionists were doing something that was, common or commonplace or normal or everyday back when they were doing it, right? The point is to break the mold a bit with art. So go for it.
Right. I also wanted to know your opinion actually on NFT collecting. Like, why do you think people collect NFTs? Because I feel like for a certain amount of people, they don't know really NFTs, they don't really understand it, and they can try to stay away from it. But people still do collect NFTs, not only for flipping, but just for collecting. What's your perspective on that?
Yeah, I mean, I think it really depends on the collector. I have so many collector friends who absolutely love collecting NFTs. And a lot of it is because, NFTs can be lots of different types of media that they're already used to. Sometimes it's, a collector who, for example, like my husband totally loves the idea of NFTs because he's really, really into collecting different avatars and memes, and he's always been a bit of a computer nerd, and that's his thing. And he'd be much more likely to go on a shopping spree for NFTs than maybe another person who really just wants to have like a traditional painting on the wall. That's less my husband's thing. He loves the screen. He loves what he can see in his screen. And so that media works really well for him. So it really just depends on the collector. I also see a bunch of, I think people don't think very often of older businessmen, but there are a lot of older businessmen who love NFTs because they're on the go very often. They love things on their big mega screen iPad. And that's where they actually want to be able to consume and enjoy stuff that tickles them and makes them laugh, because sometimes a lot of the work can be a little bit pervasive and, can be a little bit edgy. And they like that. And they don't have to necessarily have it be a work that they're displaying, that they're sharing with the whole world. It's actually something that's very personal, that they just get to enjoy. And so it really depends, I think, on, that collector's particular personality, lifestyle, perspective, and I think that's actually why NFTs can be so popular, because it can be something that's quite personal. You just particularly like that artist. You're going to consume that artist's work. You want to see it on your screen. And it's not about whether or not you're going to have space for it in your house, or if people are going to like it, will it match the furniture? Which, brings in so many other questions. Is your spouse going to like it? No, you can just buy it for yourself, and that's that. So it's a simple buy, actually.
Natasha, we have a reply from Poesy.
Oh, great.
Yeah, she uses Dennis as messenger, which is good. I mean, Poesy's answer to the audience was that generative NFT projects aren't considered art in the art world. Ho, ho, ho. So that's what the artist replies. The artist who had started from traditional art, from traditional mediums, and now she shifted to NFTs with her project Running Rabbit.
Yeah, exactly. I think actually, in fact, her existence is actually an example of how that's not true. Actually, I think that it just depends on which pocket of the art world you're talking to. Yes, there's always going to be a bit of the old guard, let's say, who are going to feel, that it's absolutely not. I mean, but we still have terms like decorative art when we're talking about posters. It's our way of poo-pooing that, right? Of hotel art. In terms of how we talk about art, there's always going to be a certain side of the art world that's a bit exclusive and snobby and intellectually highbrow in a negative way. That will always exist. At the same time, you have a super open and I would say even like aggressively progressive other side of the art market. And I don't think it's being ignored right now. They're doing so well that nobody can ignore them. And this is why all the established players are having to take note and get involved, and why you have even NFTs that are being made for large blue chip artists, because generative art and NFTs and blockchain, it's all here to stay. So I think it's absolutely part of the art market. I'm someone who's not old guard, but a little bit older from the art market, and I'm saying it's part of the art world. There you go. There's my stamp, Poesy.
Okay. Meanwhile, here we at Fuel Arts, we all purchased Running Rabbits by Poesy, because she adds the elements of gamification. It's in my opinion, it can be it's the future of the art NFT series. Those successful NFT series have to be gamified.
Yeah, and honestly,
but being handwritten from the very beginning in their assets, but then gamified.
Yeah.
Actually, replying to 3 previous questions, you've made my question, like, what do you think about the future of NFTs, useless, because you just put the elements of the replying to the 3 previous questions. So it's Sonia's time to ask the last question, I believe.
Yeah, I think that's the last question. It's the most traditional question we do in this webinar series. Basically, want to know your opinion, what would be the top 3 tips you can give to young entrepreneurs who are launching or already doing their Art+Tech startup?
Okay, my top 3. Well, let's see. There's so many things to consider, obviously, and it really depends on what type of startup it is or what type of product it is. So I'll use my most generic top 3. I think 1, is you have your product idea. What exactly are you going to do? What is your service? What is it? 2, who's going to use it? And how can you make sure that it's not just one type of person within the art world? Because I do think that's a mistake that is easy to make sometimes, where people think, I'll just go after collectors only. And in fact, there's not enough just collectors to go after. You need a bigger audience. So who are your broad audience? And then number 3, I think, is about, team. I think most people don't necessarily remember to focus on that because we have the idea of like the sole founder by themselves, making it amazing, or everyone thinks about the Steve Jobs or the Zuckerberg as being like an island to themselves, but of course it's never really true. They all had an amazing team. You have to know what is your strength. Are you better as the CTO? Are you better as the CEO? Are you better as the CMO? What is your strength? And then who do you need to complement your strengths with theirs so that you can really take off and so that you can actually be most appealing to investors, of course, because investors are savvy and smart, and they've been there around the block a few times, and they know that if a startup is reliant upon just one person really at the end of the day, that main entrepreneur, it means that like if you get sick, if anything's going to happen to you, well then what, the whole business folds because the visionary is gone? Not a good idea, right? So you want to make sure that you're not an island unto yourself, that you have a good team with you, that you can have the machine keep going even if you are out of commission for a couple of days.
Thank you, Natasha. That was an amazing phrase, and a brilliant finish of our today's discussion regarding the team, because even Fuel Arts was co-founded but not mono-founded.
There we go. Exactly. Best way to do it. Yeah.
And also, you've been working with Roxana for several years.
Several years. She's amazing. I'm so lucky that I had so many incredible people that I worked with, because obviously it's what's formed me. And even at Collectrium, it's one of the main things that Boris always said to me: you're as good as your team. So always been good advice, that one.
And we're happy at Fuel Arts having not only the management team and the team of founders and investment relation managers, but also the team of project managers, the team of our mentors, the team of our press and PR and social media managers. So,
like a child, it takes a village. Startup takes a village in the same way.
In the metaverse, the next step is to create a metaverse guided by Sylvain Levy and settle there.
Exactly. I'm here for it. Sign me up.
Okay, thank you, Natasha, so much.
Thank you.
Sonia.
Thank you, Sonia. Thank you, Dennis. Thank you so much for having me.
Absolutely, it was a pleasure.
So, everyone, our audience, see you in a week, and everything will be Ukraine. Don't forget about it.
Yes, absolutely. All love with Ukraine.
Thank you. Bye.
Bye.